Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. I remember the exact moment it happened. Not because it was dramatic or theatrical, no, that would have made sense. What made it unforgettable was the silence that followed. She stood across from me, arms folded tight against her chest, her lips pursed like she was trying to hide a smirk. I was plating her dinner, still wearing my work shirt, sleeves rolled up, sauce-stained apron tied haphazardly around my waist. I'd made chicken piccata her favorite, or at least it used to be. She hadn't requested it in years, but something in me had hoped. Maybe tonight could feel like old times. Something grounding. Something real. That hope shattered in 5 words. "I want a divorce," she said, her voice flat, calculated, almost rehearsed. I turned slowly, spatula still in my hand. I think I blinked at her for a good 3 seconds before I responded. Or maybe I didn't respond at all. I can't really remember. She must have misread my expression because she raised her eyebrows, like she was waiting for an argument, for fireworks, for me to plead. Instead, I set the spatula down, wiped my hands on a dish towel, pulled out the chair, and sat down at the table across from her. The table was set with more intention than usual: cloth napkins, dim light, the bottle of red she liked chilling in the ceramic cooler. Her wine glass sat full, mine untouched. I didn't speak. I just looked at her. And maybe that unnerved her more than shouting would have. "You don't have anything to say?" she asked. I stood up without a word and left the room. She followed me, heels clicking across the hardwood like a metronome set to rage. You can't just walk away from this. But I didn't walk away. I walked into our bedroom, opened the top drawer of my nightstand, and pulled out a manila folder. I'd prepped it 2 weeks ago. Not because I knew this moment would come tonight, but because deep down, I knew it would come eventually. Inside were divorce papers. Not signed, not dated, but filled out enough to be real. I had them notarized quietly, just in case. I handed them to her. She looked down at them like I just handed her an obituary. And in a way, I had. "You had these ready," she said, blinking. I nodded. No smugness. No venom. Just truth. She flipped through them in stunned silence. Then looked up, confused. Angry. Betrayed, even. That last one nearly made me laugh. "I thought you'd at least fight," she said. That stopped me. "For what?" I asked. "For someone who's already gone?" Her face twitched. I don't know if it was guilt or surprise that I'd said it aloud, that I'd seen it. But I had, long before this conversation. It was in the way she stopped looking at me when she spoke. The way her phone became a lifeline she clutched even at dinner. The way she stopped asking about my day. The way she recoiled slightly, but just enough, when I brushed her hand. I saw it all. I just never said it. I thought maybe if I kept showing up, she'd find her way back. But that was the old me talking, the loyal me. The version of me that believed silence, consistency, patience could fix everything. That version of me died a quiet death weeks ago. I didn't ask her if there was someone else. I already suspected there was. I didn't confront her about the late nights, the vague explanations, the unexplained new lingerie I found in the back of the drawer with tags still attached. I didn't need her confirmation. I had something better: clarity. And if there's one thing clarity gives you, it's freedom. "You really aren't going to say anything else?" she asked again, quieter this time. "No." That one word, simple, final, seemed to suck all the air out of the room. She looked around like she suddenly realized what she'd done. Not that she wanted me back, but more like she'd pulled a lever expecting one outcome, and got another. She wanted power. A reaction. Maybe a desperate speech. Maybe to watch me cry. She wanted proof that she still mattered to me. Instead, she got indifference. And I could see it hit her. Right there, in the corners of her eyes, in the way her shoulders tensed. It wasn't regret. Not yet. But it was confusion. Doubt. The first seed. I left the house that night. Not because I was angry. Not even because I was hurt. I just needed to breathe. I drove with no direction, windows down, wind washing away whatever traces of emotion were still clinging to my chest. That's the funny thing about grief. It doesn't arrive when someone dies. It arrives when you realize they've already been gone for a long time, and you just didn't see it. When I came back hours later, she was in the bedroom, asleep. Or pretending to be. The divorce papers were still sitting on the coffee table, untouched. Like she was waiting to see if I'd change my mind. But there was nothing left to change. I moved out 2 days later. No fight, no shouting, no drama. Just a quiet afternoon where I packed the essentials, left my key on the hallway table, and shut the door behind me. I didn't tell her where I was going. She didn't ask. Maybe she didn't think she had to. Maybe she thought it was just temporary, that I'd go sulk in some hotel for a few days and come crawling back with a desperate apology and flowers. But that wasn't where this was headed. Not anymore. I'd already signed a short-term lease weeks ago. A furnished unit in a quiet, older building downtown, with a balcony that overlooked the city's gray skyline. It wasn't much, but it felt like mine. Clean slate. Fresh air. Silence that didn't feel heavy. The first night I slept there, I didn't dream. And that, strangely, felt like peace. I didn't block her number. I didn't send a spiteful text. But I didn't initiate contact either. What was there to say? She wanted space. She got it. It's funny how people want control until you give it to them. Then they panic. 3 days after I left, I started getting messages. Hey, just checking in. Didn't expect you to go ghost. You okay? This is really how you want to handle it? I didn't respond. Not out of cruelty. Just preservation. When silence doesn't break someone, it begins to rot them. By the end of the week, she called twice. I let them go to voicemail. No tears. Just mild irritation in her voice, like a teacher scolding a student for skipping class. The power dynamic she was clinging to was slipping, and she didn't know how to handle that. Meanwhile, I met with my lawyer. A quiet guy named Farid, sharp, methodical, not easily rattled. He reviewed the paperwork I'd brought in, nodded through most of it, asked a few pointed questions about shared accounts and property. Any third parties involved? He asked casually. I looked at him for a second, then said, I don't have proof, but I have suspicions. He raised an eyebrow but didn't press. Do you want to find out? I thought about it. For a long time. I'd wrestled with that question more times than I could count. But something about chasing proof felt beneath me now. I shook my head. Not unless it's necessary. Farid made a note. Understood. But I wasn't completely done with the idea. Just because I didn't want the proof yet, didn't mean I didn't want to prepare for the storm I felt was coming. So I made another call, this one personal. To her cousin, Leah. She and I were never close, but there was always a quiet understanding between us. She had a low tolerance for bullshit, even from her own family. Especially from her own family. I invited her for coffee. Neutral location. She looked surprised but came anyway. We talked for an hour, light stuff at first. Then I asked, casually, you know anything about the guy she's seeing? She didn't pretend to misunderstand. Her mouth tightened. Then she leaned back in her chair. So you figured it out. That was all I needed to hear. She hasn't said anything directly, Leah continued. But I've heard things. From mutuals. She's been seeing someone. Not new either. They've been in touch for a while. I looked down at my coffee. How long? Leah hesitated. Then, since before the I want a divorce moment. That wasn't a decision. That was a transition. I nodded slowly. Something clenched in my jaw, but I didn't let it show. Do you know who? I asked. She hesitated again. I've got an idea, but I'll confirm it. Let me do some quiet digging. I agreed. We left it at that. She hugged me when we left. A real hug. No awkwardness. No pity. Later that night, I stared out at the city lights from my small balcony. My phone buzzed again. Her name lit up the screen. Are we seriously not even going to talk about this? I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have something to say, but because I wanted her to sit with the silence. Let her feel the vacuum. Let her feel the absence of power. She thought she'd own the aftermath. But all she had now were shadows. And I had time. And patience. And something she didn't expect me to have any more: leverage. It was Leah who finally said his name. She didn't call. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, holding 2 iced coffees and a folder under her arm. I let her in without a word, and she dropped the drinks on the counter like we were about to review tax documents. But it wasn't tax season. It was reckoning season. I confirmed it, she said, flipping the folder open. His name's Gavin. Ring any bells? I stared at the name on the printout. Gavin. Gavin Chandler. The same Gavin I'd gone into business with 7 years ago. The same guy I co-founded a boutique digital agency with before walking away 18 months ago, burned out, disgusted, and convinced the firm had lost its soul. I remembered the day I told my wife I was leaving. I'd expected resistance, maybe concern. Instead, she'd barely blinked. She encouraged it, in fact. You've been miserable, she'd said. This is probably a good thing. I thought she meant for me. But now, I saw it. She meant it was good because he would still be there. You're sure it's him? I asked. Leah didn't flinch. My sister saw them. Together. Multiple times. Coffee shops in Midtown. That ugly Italian place she used to hate. My stomach twisted. I didn't need to ask more. That restaurant had been ours once. She used to complain about the garlic, the cramped booths. Apparently, with Gavin, it was charming. They're not even being that careful, Leah added. Either they think they're invisible or they just don't care anymore. Probably both. It was surreal, hearing all this from Leah. But something in her voice, steady, almost clinical, told me she didn't come to gloat. She came because she was tired of the games, too. She used to talk about you all the time, Leah said quietly, shifting in her chair. Said you were too passive. Too predictable. Said she wanted someone who challenged her. I laughed under my breath. So she found a guy who lies for a living. Gavin always had that salesman polish. The kind of guy who could charm your mother while sleeping with your wife. When we built the company together, I was the workhorse. Strategy, long hours, endless spreadsheets. He handled clients. Smiled. Took the meetings. Took the credit. And, apparently, took my wife. I should have been furious. But I wasn't. Not in the way I expected. It was more like a slow-burning nausea, like watching a familiar movie with an ending I could suddenly recite by heart. I'd seen this coming. I just hadn't admitted it to myself until now. What are you going to do? Leah asked, tone careful. I looked at her. Nothing yet. She tilted her head. Seriously. I nodded. She expects me to explode. To show up at her door and make a scene. Gavin probably does too. That's how they win, by turning it into a spectacle. Let them think I'm broken. Or better yet, indifferent. Leah exhaled. That'll scare her more than anything. She was right. The absence of noise, the calm, was the worst thing I could offer. Silence gives people nothing to push against. It makes them question what they can't control. But I wasn't done. Not yet. After Leah left, I opened my laptop. Logged into an old cloud folder I hadn't touched in over a year. Inside were pitch decks, contracts, financial records from the company Gavin and I built. Some of those documents still had my name on them. Gavin had begged me to leave quietly. Take your buyout, man, he'd said. No bad blood. And I had. But I kept records. I kept access. And most importantly, I kept my mouth shut. Until now. Later that evening, she called again. I let it ring. Then a text followed. Can we meet? Just to talk. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I was already moving for steps ahead. Let her wonder why I wasn't taking the bait. Let her feel the full weight of being unseen. She'd spent months building a future with someone else while expecting me to crumble when she walked out. But I didn't fall apart. I evaporated. And soon, she'd realized that disappearing wasn't surrender, it was strategy. A week passed before she asked to meet in person. Not through a call. Not even a voice note. Just a single text. Please. Just coffee. Neutral ground. I need 5 minutes. The phrasing was calculated. Not dramatic. Not apologetic. Just reasonable, on purpose. She thought control was still on the table. She hadn't yet realized it was already gone. I agreed. A single word. Sure. We met at a cafe in Midtown. Not the one we used to love. This one was clinical, metal chairs, exposed beams, indie jazz humming overhead. She arrived before me. She'd done her makeup. Subtle, but noticeable. The kind she used to wear for client meetings or first dates. She was trying to reset the tone. Start from a place of poise. But the moment she saw me, her expression faltered. I didn't look broken. I didn't look angry. I looked free. That alone seemed to throw her off more than anything. She offered a polite smile, like we were old coworkers catching up after a long project. How are you? She asked, like it wasn't insane to say that to the husband you walked out on. I'm good, I said, and I meant it. She nodded, trying to gauge how much emotion she could risk showing. I know this has been hard. For both of us. I thought some distance might help us figure things out. You know, gain perspective. I stared at her. You mean the kind of perspective you get in a hotel room with my ex-business partner? Her eyes snapped up. Her mouth opened. I'd never seen her caught off guard before, not like this. She started to speak, then stopped, then tried again. I don't know what you think you know. Leah told me. And honestly, I'm not mad. Just surprised you thought I wouldn't find out. She sat back. No more pretending. No more smiling. You left, she said, as if that explained everything. You gave up on us. You checked out emotionally before I did. That was her last lifeline. The classic reframe. If she couldn't deny the betrayal, she'd rewrite the narrative. But I wasn't there to fight. You wanted me to beg, I said. That's why you told me you wanted a divorce like it was some impulsive revelation. You expected me to grovel, to chase you, to make you feel chosen. But I didn't. And that's what really hurt, isn't it? She didn't answer. You needed the power. But when I didn't give it to you, you fell back on someone who always treated power like a party trick. Gavin and I, she began. Don't care, I said, cutting her off. He can have you. He probably deserves what's coming. She blinked. What's coming? I sipped my coffee, slow and deliberate. Let's just say I've been revisiting some old contracts. Turns out, our separation doesn't just free me from this marriage. It gives me room to move, legally speaking. Her brow furrowed. You said you didn't want to go after him, that you weren't interested in revenge. I'm not, but I am interested in fairness. I reached into my coat and pulled out a plain white envelope. Set it on the table. She stared at it like it might explode. What is that? Your words. From a burner number. To Gavin. Compliments of Leah. She got screenshots before he wiped them. She thought you should have a copy. In case you need to remember how you laughed about keeping me around until the paperwork clears. Her face drained of color. I stood up, slow and calm. You were right. Some distance did help me gain perspective. And then I leaned in, just close enough to see the tremble she tried to hide. Next time you try to orchestrate a clean break, make sure your co-conspirator doesn't screw you over in the process. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't look back. She sat there, still as stone, while the barista called someone else's name. She texted me that night. First it was short. You didn't have to do that. Then more desperate. You're not like this. Please just let me explain everything the right way. And finally, please, just don't leave things like this. But I already had. The difference between disappearing and running away is intent. Cowards run. I vanished with purpose. Quietly. Legally. Clean. The next day, I closed the last joint account we still shared, an investment portfolio she never bothered to learn the login for. It was in both our names, yes, but all the contributions had come from me. She never even asked where the dividends were going. She assumed, like everything else, it would just keep benefiting her by default. That morning, I liquidated it and moved it into a private trust. For future use. For future peace. Not hers. The apartment lease was up in 4 weeks. I left the keys and paid off the last month in advance. Then I boarded a flight to Colorado, quiet town, project-based consulting gig, new address with no trail. A friend helped me land the job. He owed me one from years ago, and I cashed it in with no fanfare. She didn't know I was gone until a week later. The texts turned into missed calls. Then voicemails. I never listened to them. Not once. I heard she tried to contact Leah. That didn't go well. According to a mutual friend, Gavin ghosted her the moment things got complicated. He never planned on a future with her. She was an escape hatch, not a destination. He'd already been seeing someone else, someone with connections his company needed. My ex-wife hadn't just been betrayed. She'd been played. And for the first time, she couldn't flip the script. There was no one left to absorb the blame. I didn't smile when I heard that. Not really. But I did sleep easier. It took her another month to send the last message. You always said I'd regret pushing you too far. I just never thought it would feel like this. I was wrong. About so much. There was no follow-up. No more calls. Just silence, finally, the same silence I gave her when she thought she had the upper hand. I never replied. Not because I hated her, but because the last thing she ever said to me, the real last thing, not that text, was in our kitchen, over cold chicken piccata, when she squared her shoulders and said, I want a divorce. She expected drama, desperation, a battle she could win. Instead, I gave her dignity she didn't earn. And when she realized what she lost, she reached out, hands trembling, voice cracking, heart unmoored. But by then, I was already gone. And some silences are permanent.
Dear listeners,